वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी कहो नित्यानंद श्रीत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्-भागवतम की जय। निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे। All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai। Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya। Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya। Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 23, text number 55. Sangaha Yaha Samsritehe Hetuhu Sango Yaha Samsriter Hetur Asatsu Vihitaha Adhiya Asatsu Vihito Adhiya Saha Eva Sadhushu Kritaha Sa Eva Sadhushu Krito Nisangatvaya Kalpate Nisangatvaya Kalpate Sango Yah Samsriter Hetur Asatsu Vihito Adhiya Sa Eva Sadhushu Krito Nisangatvaya Kalpate. Sangaha association, Yaha which, Samsritehe of the cycle of birth and death, Hetuhu the cause, Asatsu with those engaged in sense gratification, Vihitaha done, Adhiya through ignorance, Saha the same thing, Eva certainly, Sadhushu with saintly persons, Kritaha performed, Nisangatvaya to liberation, Kalpate leads. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage, but the same type of association performed with a saintly person leads to the path of liberation, even if performed without knowledge. Kindly repeat the translation. Association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage, but the same type of association performed with a saintly person leads to the path of liberation, even if performed without knowledge. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The association of a saintly person in any way bears the same result. For example, Lord Krishna met many kinds of living entities, and some treated him as an enemy, and some treated him as an agent for sense gratification. It is generally said that the gopis were attached to Krishna for sense attractions, and yet they became first-class devotees of the Lord. Kamsa, Shishupala, Dantavakra, and other demons, however, were related to Krishna as enemies. But whether they associated with Krishna as enemies for sense gratification out of fear, or as pure devotees, they all got liberation. That is the result of association with the Lord. Even if one does not understand who he is, the results have the same efficacy. Association with a great saintly person also results in liberation. Just as whether one goes towards fire knowingly or unknowingly, the fire will make one warm. Devahuti expressed her gratefulness, for although she wanted to associate with Kardama Muni only for sense gratification, because he was spiritually great, she was sure to be liberated by his benediction. Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. proper way to approach a sadhu. One should approach a sadhu so that one can solve the real problems of his life. He can cease this material bondage and become liberated. That is the greatest benediction a sadhu can give. It is said that the words of sadhu are like the sharp knife which can cut our attachments, hridaya granthi, to pieces. And actually that is the real association of sadhu. But here we can find Mother Devahuti is saying that actually, even though the real benediction one can get from the sadhu is when he receives spiritual instructions and his material life is completely vanquished. That is the real benediction one can receive. But unfortunately, Devahuti is lamenting that she did not take advantage of this. So similarly, we must also at least sometimes introspect and see that I am in association of devotees, whether I am really taking advantage of association of devotees. Because it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya is teaching to Sanatana Goswami the process of devotional service, that when there are, Prabhupada explains that, and in the purport, very nicely, Prabhupada explains about this process through the commentary of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. There it says, when one becomes fortunate, then the Lord somehow or other plans to relieve him as super soul inside and the spiritual master outside. So this fortune, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur explains, this fortune is not by some kind of pious activities. Even though it says, the verse says, when somebody becomes fortunate, accumulated pious activities. So Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur explains there are three kinds of pious activities. He says that Bhakti Unmikhi, that is one kind of Sukriti, Bhogonmukhi Sukriti, and another is Mokshonmukhu Sukriti. These last two, Bhogonmukhi Sukriti and Mokshonmukhi Sukriti, these people are actually not fortunate. Fortunate is one if someone somehow or other comes in contact with a pure devotee of the Lord. Then he becomes fortunate. See, we see that famous verse, Brahmande Brahmite Kono Bhagyavan Jeev. So that Bhagyavan is explained by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Is somehow or other, if someone has acquired this Sukriti of coming in touch with a pure devotee of the Lord, then his doors to liberation are open. It becomes open. So, Prabhupada, in Lord Kapila's instructions, he very beautifully explains this concept of how the association of pure devotee is actually a path to liberation from this material world. So there, in one of his lectures, Prabhupada says, at the present moment, we are Sangadosha Yukta. Sangadosh means being associated with three modes of material nature, and because of that we are in bondage, samsriti. So we have to become Sangadosh Mukta. From Yukta, we have to become Mukta. And how one can become liberated from Sangadosh is by Sadhu Sangha. That is what we see here, what we see Srimad-Bhagavatam, and even in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna describes that. Lord Kapila explains this to his mother later on. He says, Prasangam ajaram pasham atmanaha kavayo viduhu. Material attachment, prasangam, it brings about material association. Prasanga means actually material association or material attachment. Ajaram pasham, very strong entanglement in this material world. How much actually we should understand it is important to avoid that kind of association. Lord Kapila says, if we associate with people who are materialistic, ajaram pasham, strong entanglement, we will be bound in this material world. Atmanaha, for the soul, it is entanglement. Kavayo viduhu, this is known to the great personalities, to a learned person, one who is intelligent. He understands that material association brings about strong entanglement in this material world. And then he gives a formula. He says, same kind of attachment what we have for material association, if we can turn it to a sadhu, then the same kind of association or attachment to that association will open up our path to liberation. We will become Sangadosha Mukta. Of course, it is a process, it takes time, but this is how it is. There is no other way. So he says, Sa eva sadhushu kruto mokshadvaram apavrataha. That same attachment, prasangam, sadhushu kruto, when it is applied to a sadhu, mokshadvaram apavrata, it opens up our path to liberation. As it is said in Bhagavatam, which is a very famous verse, we have heard many times. Mahat sevam dvarum ahur vimukte. There are two gateways One kind of association leads us to Vimukta Dwaram, doors of liberation, and Tamo Dwaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam. And if we associate with materialistic people, then the doors to hell, Tamo Dwaram, doors to ignorance, doors to bondage in this material world. So, actually, we should very introspectively think about this, how important it is to associate with devotees. Sometimes we may find, sometimes some devotees may feel, Prabhu, I was better outside. Recently one devotee expressed to me, looks like I was very attached to Krishna when I was outside, and then now I have become full-time devotee and I am lacking in my enthusiasm, not getting up for the programs, not getting that energy somehow or other. Whereas when I was outside, I used to stay long distance away and I used to relish. I have to go to the temple. I used to get up and come. Isn't it? Sometimes we find this. So actually, opposite should happen. Our taste, our ruchi, our attachment to Krishna should multiply, not decrease. Earlier, our attachment to the Lord is more on sentimental platform, more sometimes because we have seen the pangs of material world, what we see outside, and the kind of happiness we experience for the first time definitely overpowers us. I remember when I joined in the very beginning, I was also very distressed in my life. I was very attached to my maternal grandmother. Every 2 months of our holidays in our school times, so I used to visit my mother's hometown. And grandmothers are generally like that. We become very attached to them. So my maternal grandmother, I was sleeping right next to her in that village. We were sleeping outside. So suddenly she developed a heart attack. She got a pain in the chest, and for 40 minutes, practically she was suffering and calling out her son's name. Unfortunately, it was not Narayana. Ajamila was fortunate enough to name his son as Narayana. So I saw personally how she left the body, and I was completely bewildered. What is this life? So that was the time then I started this spiritual search. First I went to Raman Maharishi ashram, could not find much there. I went to Ramakrishna ashram, there was one Swami, heard his lecture. Harshananda Swami was there, elderly person. After the lecture I expressed, sir, I want to practice spiritual life, can I join? So he asked me, what are you doing? I said, I am pursuing my degree. He said, you complete this degree and after that complete your master's, then you approach me. So actually it was saving grace by the Lord somehow or other. After that, so this was in St. Joseph's College where I was studying. There was one friend of mine, we used to call him Small. He was very short. And just like in Kannada we call Gidda. So like that we used to call him Small. He was following Jaddu Krishnamurti and he would smoke. Every moment of what you do, you should enjoy. So he used to smoke and enjoy that and say that this is spiritual life. Somehow, he said, the kind of interest you have, because I was inclined, he knew that. He said, I will guide you to one place, you should go there. I think that is suitable for you. And it was he who gave me the address of ISKCON. So he said, of course, that was an old address of ISKCON in Bellary Road. So I went there and they told me, no, it is already shifted to Rajaji Nagar. So there I went. I used to have a cycle with me. My father was in Air Force. So I used to catch, trucks from Mekri Circle with one hand, and I used to ride to the temple. So first time when I went, it happened to be a Sunday, and I was blown out by the kirtan. My God, this is something which is really, out of world, I was able to see. And I was not very much attached to philosophy at that time. Take prasadam. After that, nice pongal used to be there in our old temple, nice sweet pongal. Used to eat that and go away. So there was one devotee, Kankabja. So he used to look out for young people. And somehow he caught me and he said, "Kya karega?" Andar aa jao, kya karega? So then I started thinking, and then he used to take me to Chanchalpati Prabhu's class. So it's a fact that actually in the beginning, when we come to Krishna consciousness, the kind of sorrow, the kind of world we are living in, and when we for the first time see the spiritual taste, it really enlightens us in that direction. It is very overpowering. But actually, over a period of time, it should increase. That is what the process says. But what happens is, as we say, familiarity breeds contempt. We are actually victims of familiarity. The more we become familiar and take it for granted, I have association of devotees, everything is fine. We become familiar with chanting the holy name. We become familiar with the spiritual master. We become familiar with the deities and we do seva aparadh. We do nama aparadh. We do, Vaishnava aparadh. And then slowly whatever we have developed also falls away. Actually, that is the most important cause we don't develop further taste. And then we wonder whether it was better when I was outside, because we remember that. We were so engrossed and, we used to come with so much of enthusiasm, and suddenly I am seeing I am lacking that enthusiasm. Similarly, sometimes even as a devotees, senior devotees who are there, we should also contemplate that, because this is one thing when I was asking that devotee. So he told me, Prabhu, when I was just, outside and trying to join, so much of association devotees used to give me. And now once I am inside, nobody even bothers about that. So we should see actually that sometimes hand holding may be required for quite a time. Sometimes we may think, my job is now over. Somebody has joined the temple and we forget it. We think that it is done now. He will swim by himself. So I realized that sometimes we take it for granted. And actually, we should remember our hard struggle and how much association we got. I remember, even after joining for years together, I used to sit in that association class of Chanchalapati Prabhu. Very inspiring. So we should see that are we giving that opportunity to devotees? Otherwise, that same feeling will come in the mind that better I was outside and practicing. So, here we can see Mother Devahuti, she is lamenting that actually the opportunity she had, not understanding the advantage of taking the association of Kardama Muni. Rather, she only was trying to enjoy his materialistic side. That yes, he provided everything. He gave a mansion, all kinds of facility which she was lacking for some time, which she had when she was a princess earlier. So she served with so much austerity, actually to receive spiritual benediction. But instead she got all kind of material comforts. And now she is realizing that actually I never took advantage. So similarly, we should think life is very short. Time should not pass away and then we lament that I joined so many years in Krishna consciousness, I never took advantage of real association of devotees. So it is very important. So, there are some very key verses in Bhagavatam which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes to Sanatana Goswami, explaining about how devotional service to the Lord actually it never develops without the association of a pure devotee of the Lord. There is no possibility. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes two very important verses which we have all read many times. One is Jada Bharat when he is instructing King Rahuguna. So we find King Rahuguna was amazed to see the kind of spiritual advancement which Jada Bharat had, which he could never imagine from his external looks. He was looking like a hefty and somebody like uncivilized. But the moment he started talking, King Rahuguna was completely surprised. And then he asks, how did you attain this? So at that time, Jada Bharat says this. He says, Vina Mahat Pada Rajobhishekam, without smearing the dust of pure devotees of the Lord, there is no possibility of developing devotional service. No possibility. Actually, in all of our lives, we can see there is no some sudden mercy of Krishna which comes. Devotional service begins, even though we may have Shraddha, but Sadhu Sangha. Adau Shraddha. Beginning is our faith. But then it becomes ripened in the association of devotees. So, that Shraddha which we have in the beginning, in association of devotees, Prabhupada says, what do the devotees tell us? They will not give some ash or cash, isn't it? That is not, Prabhupada says that. It's not that devotees will give you some ash, you give me some cash, I will give you ash. No. That is not devotees' business. Devotees will give instructions to cut off these material attachments. That is called as bhajana kriya. So when we follow bhajana kriya, if we do it properly, and this is the stage which is very important. Sometimes we don't adhere, we don't understand the importance of that, and we anticipate some sudden surge of attachment for the Lord. It is not going to happen. This process, it undergoes two phases, Vidhi and Raganuga. So to come from Vidhi to Raganuga is a gradual process. So we have to follow the rules and regulations. We have to understand the importance of what Srila Prabhupada has given us. The whole of program which Srila Prabhupada has given morning to night, Prabhupada says it serves the most important principle which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains. Never forget Krishna, always remember Krishna. What is that verse you remember? Vismartavyo na jatuchit, smartavya satatam Vishnu, vismartavyo na jatuchit. At any time, in any circumstances, we should not forget Krishna, we should always remember Krishna. So all the activities we do, Prabhupada even explains that even after 10 o'clock, first of all, morning, Mangal Aarti, unto Bhagavatam class, up to even Prasadam, Prabhupada says, we have to attend without fail. Just like Prabhupada gives the example, disciple should be like the watch, tick, 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 it goes. Like that we have to be very regular. And then after that Prabhupada says, whatever services we go out, whether it is for the enrollment of life members or whether it is for selling books. So Prabhupada is giving the example, when you are selling book, you are understanding very clearly you are not selling some magazine. You are selling Krishna's book. You are remembering Krishna and the result of that is also going to Krishna. When you are enrolling members, you are talking about Krishna. And the Lakshmi you are bringing is also being utilized for Krishna. So everything, whatever a devotee does, is just for so that he can always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. These are actually very important principles. This, if we forget, if we do not do this homework of doing our Vidhi Bhakti properly, then probably years may pass, we may never get Raganuga Bhakti. We may never become attached to Krishna. So, this phase is actually very, very important, that we follow all rules and regulation with a proper spirit also. It should not be niyamagraha also, wherein we follow all rules and regulation without understanding the spirit behind it, forgetting the spirit. That also should not happen. That we find in so many temples, they follow rules and regulation, but because that consciousness of Krishna is missing, we find practically the temples are neglected. Whereas, if consciousness of Krishna is present in whatever we are doing, then actually we can advance. So we'll stop with this. Granth-raj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.